Welcome to Get Deck EDH, guys. Alec here, and today I want to talk about synergy. Now, what is synergy? Well, let's do a quick description because it's kind of important to understand fully what synergy means. So, the interaction or cooperation of two or more organizations or other agents to produce a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate effects. So, essentially, think of a car, and a car has parts to it, right? It has an engine, it has wheels, it has a body, and those pieces work together in order to get to a destination. So you can think of it like that, and there's gas involved to get it going, yada yada. That's my analogy. Regardless, I want to dive deep into synergy, and this is a follow-up to my pillars video, which I will have the pillars an example later on in this video near the end. So feel free to go check that out. It's in the description. It may give you a little more insight on my pillar system in general. It's a quick video. It's about a little bit under 9 minutes. So feel free to watch that, pause this, and come back. Otherwise, let's get into synergy. So first off, let's just do a quick overview on synergy. And by doing that, I'm going to show you a few commanders that kind of fit into the niche. So first off, with synergy, everything that gets the engine going, especially in relevance to the pillar system that I've shown you guys in the last video, there's always a catalyst to the engine. And what I mean by that is there's something that's going to start triggering all of your effects, your abilities, your permanents, whatever you have going on. It's going to start that chain reaction. And so in this instance, I'm going to show you SRAM and Jura. Now, both of these cards do very similar things, except they specify in different ways. So to start off with SRAM, Senior Edificer, he's a draw engine, so he fits into the card advantage portion of the pillar system, but whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So where this gets kind of fun is obviously you see three options here that can draw you cards, but to maximize our synergy, we'd have to focus and hone in on one. I'd probably hone in on one that you want to build around, essentially. So we have three options of builds. We can do aura deck, we can do an equipment deck, and we can do a vehicle deck. So the last two options care about artifacts, obviously. So we'd want to hone in on artifacts, more specifically vehicles or equipments. And the same thing with auras, we want to hone in on enchantments, especially auras. Now, so it's pretty simple, just kind of clarifying that when we do synergy, we want to maximize it, and to maximize it, we got to play to the advantage of our commander or what the deck's contents are. I mean, whether your commander be a piece to the puzzle or the puzzle itself. And same thing with Jura, or the Light Captain. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card, and just to note, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic. So we have the option of building in any three of those categories. Most people do artifacts, especially like a Cheerios theme, which is just zero cost artifacts. But I think if you wanted to be a little spicier and a little more interesting, you can go either the legendaries or sagas route. And hone in on that, you get a good draw engine with your commander, so you're never really worrying about your card advantage portion. So those are just two quick examples and simple examples of how honing in your strategy with your catalyst can promote your game plan. Next, I want to jump into something a little more complicated in the synergy sense, because generally when you build a deck, you want to kind of hone in your archetype, and there's always sub-themes to your archetype. So say you're running a main strategy, but you have a sub-theme of, say, counters. In that instance, I'll show you Ulashed. So Ulashed the Hate Seeds in Gruul, and when he enters with a +1 counter on it for each red creature you control and each green creature you control. And then you can pay one, remove a counter from Ulashed, and then choose one. Ulashed deals 1 damage to target creature, or create a green sapling creature token. So right off the bat, we're seeing three things here. We're seeing counters, token generation, and damage. So how would we hone in on the synergy with this deck? Well, so obviously the main support is going to be for tokens, with some support with counters and support for the ETB damage effects. Definitely keep that in mind when you're building a commander, is it's okay to have multiple facets, but they have to interact with each other in a way that's propelling your game forward and not just sitting in the mud. All right, now that we've covered the basics, let's dig real deep and get real technical with this and jump into an example of a synergistic deck that is very focused and allows multiple avenues in achieving our goal. So I want to talk about one of my personal decks, my Mono Black Storm combo deck. It's going to be Acererak the Arch-Lich. And I'm going to read the card for you, and then I'm going to dissect it and show you how many ways we can synergize with what we can see on the card. So first, He costs 3 mana. That's important down the line. I'll get to that later. But when he enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, return Acererak the Archlich to his owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. When he attacks, this part really doesn't matter because it's not what the deck's built around, but when he attacks, for each opponent, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless that player sacks a creature. Now, what we're focusing on is the first ability, and I'm going to explain why, is because the whole goal of the deck is to essentially reduce Acerak's cost to 1 or 0 and loop the Dungeon of the Mad Mage until we can get our combo pieces / removals, usually symmetrical, so we're using those abilities and cards in order to keep our opponents behind while we dig. Now, how do we dig? That's where it gets fun, and how do we synergize with this is even more fun. So first, we're going to absolutely dissect each part, going from the top down to the bottom. So first off, let's break down the cast triggers that we get from this, because this whole deck is about repeatedly casting Acererak multiple times in a turn. So we care a lot about cast triggers and also ETB triggers and leave the battlefield triggers, because he's going to hit the field and then return to our hand, which means we have 3 avenues to synergize triggers with, which is huge and gives us a lot of options. So with his cost, we can start there. That is reducible, and that's going to be our main goal early on, is getting cost reducers out to make Acererak as cheap, if not free, to cast. And then we can start focusing on our triggers. So what we can trigger on is obviously any black spell. So that's the first cast trigger that we have an option for. And then what else cast triggers we have? We have creature cast triggers, because he is a creature, so anything that gets benefited from a creature being cast is going to synergize with this deck. Also important, he's a zombie wizard. So anything that cares about that creature type, either one of those is going to synergize with the deck, especially because we're casting him so many times. And I'm going to break this all down with the pillar system and show you an example of how this synergizing combo works as a whole and how those pieces interact. Because that's important that you guys see a good example of what I'm talking about when it comes to synergy and how you can really tweak it and the flexibility you have to tweak it. So then, after we get through the creature types and what it is, he is also a permanent. Then we have enter the battlefield triggers. So anything that I mentioned, mostly this is going to care about his, the card type, which is a permanent, and then his creature types, which is zombie and wizard, or just in general, any permanent entering. So we have synergy options for ETBs, and then since he leaves the battlefield and returns to your hand, that gives us an alternate avenue to plug in leave the battlefield effects that benefit. And there's definitely a couple cards that do benefit our game plan that require leave the battlefield. So you can kind of see how many options you have in order to synergize with a card just by breaking it down and fully acknowledging all of its attributes. Okay, so let's jump into how this interacts with the pillar system, and to showcase this, I have laid out the spread, which is utilizing each pillar in order to reach our synergizing goal, which is a loop. So this is an example of a loop. And now it's important, when I mentioned catalyst earlier, the catalyst in this situation is our commander Acererak. So as you can see, we're going to start off with Carnival of Souls. And Carnival of Souls reads, whenever a creature comes into play, you lose 1 life and add black to your mana pool. And then we'll follow up with a Yara, First of Locthwain. So she reads, when another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. She also gives us the option to sack another black creature to draw a card if we can tap her. Next though, this is when we're going to get to the gas. With utility, we have Heartless Summoning, which is going to make our creature spells cost 2 less to cast, which in turn will reduce the cost of Acererak and the next creature we're going to cast, which I'll get to in a second. But it does have a clause, creatures you control get -1/-1, so while slotting this card in a deck, you would have to consider the fact that your important creatures, not like tokens or anything, don't have a toughness of 1 because they'll die. So after we have those pieces set up, we're going to cast our value piece, which is Diregraph Colossus. So this is going to rely on the cast trigger of a zombie spell to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So since Acerek's a zombie, every time we cast him, we make a 2/2, which will be a 1/1 because of Heartless Summoning, but you get the gist. And then next, how do we work this all together to cause removal? we get deathmatch. Whenever a creature comes into play, that creature's controller may have target creature of his or her choice get -3/-3 until end of turn. So I'm sure you can start seeing the pieces, but I'm going to break down how this works all together, piece by piece. So now that we have all these pieces on the board, we can start doing the catalyst, which is going to get this engine going. So we would cast Acererak, Diregraph Colossus would trigger, creating a 2/2 black zombie creature token, which then triggers a Yara and Carnival of Souls. So each opponent would lose a life, you gain a life, and then you'd float 1 mana and lose a life. But that's okay because a Yara just made it so we net 0 life loss, which is great. And then it's just pinging our opponents at this point. And then we have a deathmatch trigger from the token entering as well. We get to put -3/-3 on one of our opponent's creatures. Awesome. And then Acererak enters, and then those 3 trigger again. Carnival of Souls, Yara, and Deathmatch. So now we have 2 floating black, which means we are mana positive for the 1 we cost. Well, we have to use 1 down the line, of course. So essentially what this will promote is 1, all of our opponent's creatures, as long as they don't have hexproof or shroud, will be removed. Because we're going to have an infinite loop right now due to the cast triggers being reduced and the mana being positive. That means we're producing infinite black, infinite ETBs, infinite LTBs, infinite removal, and infinite token generation, and infinite life loss to our opponents due to Yara. Now obviously this is a very complex board state, and there's multiple ways of achieving these effects in the deck, because you obviously don't want to be relying on 1 card to synergize with your game plan. You usually want multiple instances of each effect, so therefore you can consistently hit your synergy point, which will then create this chain reaction like I've shown you here. Each goal is feeding into each other, if that makes sense. And that's what the catalyst promotes, because without the catalyst this doesn't happen. And obviously in different decks you're going to have more opportunity for a catalyst, so you're not going to be worrying too much on your pieces at that point, because everything should be working cohesively. But this just gives you an example of how multiple different types of effects can synergize with 1 catalyst and how they interact with each other. Now I could show you synergy combos and different types of synergy all day. This is a huge topic and it's very diverse and looks different based on the deck you're playing. But hopefully with these brief examples, you kind of know what to hone in on the next time you're building a deck and what to focus on and how it relates to your entire game plan, and keeping in mind that a catalyst is necessary in order to get this engine going. So hopefully you guys found this video interesting. I tried to keep it as quick and short as possible. If there's any information that you felt you didn't fully understand, or some questions you have about more details on how this would work and different options, feel free to comment below. I will definitely answer as soon as possible. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe. I got more things coming in the works. Other than that, I got nothing left for you guys. Take care, have a wonderful week.